The small coastal town of Havenbrook was picturesque in every way. Nestled between rolling hills and the shimmering expanse of the ocean, it was a place where time seemed to move slower, where life unfolded like the pages of a well-worn novel. It was here that Clara lived, a quiet, unassuming teenager who often went unnoticed by most people. But beneath her calm exterior lay a mind sharp as a blade, capable of unraveling mysteries others couldn't even see. Clara had always been different from her peers. While other teenagers spent their afternoons at the beach or playing video games, she preferred solitude. She could often be found sitting on the edge of the pier, sketchbook in hand, drawing intricate designs inspired by the patterns of waves crashing against the rocks below. Her teachers praised her intelligence, but they also noted how reserved she was, rarely speaking unless spoken to. To many, Clara was just another face in the crowd, an ordinary girl leading an ordinary life. What no one realized, however, was that Clara's world wasn't as simple as it appeared. For starters, there was Evelyn, her mother. Evelyn was the heart and soul of Havenbrook, beloved by everyone who crossed her path. With her warm smile and endless patience, she ran the local library with a grace that made visitors feel instantly welcome. People often joked that Evelyn knew more about books than anyone else in town, and they weren't wrong. Her knowledge extended far beyond literature. She seemed to have answers for everything, whether it was helping someone find the perfect recipe or offering advice during tough times. But Evelyn's presence in Havenbrook was shrouded in mystery. She had arrived in the town nearly 20 years ago under peculiar circumstances. According to local lore, she had been found wandering along the shoreline after a severe storm, dazed and disoriented. When asked about her past, Evelyn claimed to have lost her memory in a car accident. No one ever questioned her story. How could they? She was too kind, too generous, too human. Over time, the townsfolk accepted her without hesitation, and soon enough, Evelyn became one of them. For Clara, growing up with Evelyn had been both comforting and confusing. On one hand, her mother was everything a child could ask for, loving, supportive, and endlessly curious about the world. On the other hand, there were moments when Clara felt a strange disconnect, as though something vital was missing. Evelyn never talked about her childhood or shared stories of her youth, and whenever Clara pressed her for details, Evelyn would simply change the subject. It wasn't until recently that Clara began noticing odd things happening around town. At first, they were subtle, a patch of crops wilting overnight, birds flying erratically across the sky, or sudden power outages that left the streets eerily dark. Most people dismissed these occurrences as natural phenomena or technical glitches, but Clara wasn't so sure. Something about them felt deliberate, almost calculated. Her suspicions deepened one rainy afternoon when she decided to explore the attic of their old Victorian house. Evelyn rarely ventured upstairs, claiming it was too dusty, but Clara's curiosity got the better of her. Armed with a flashlight, she climbed the creaky wooden stairs and pushed open the heavy door. The room smelled faintly of cedar and mildew, its air thick with decades of forgotten memories. Dust motes danced in the beam of her flashlight as she scanned the cluttered space. In the corner, tucked beneath a pile of yellowed newspapers, Clara discovered a leather-bound journal. Its cover was worn and cracked, bearing no title or markings. Intrigued, she flipped through the pages, her brow furrowing as she tried to make sense of the cryptic symbols scrawled inside. Some looked like mathematical equations, while others resembled constellations mapped onto the night sky. Interspersed among the symbols were fragments of text written in a language Clara didn't recognize. One phrase kept repeating itself: the convergence. Clara's pulse quickened. What did it mean? And why would her mother have such a strange book hidden away? She tucked the journal under her arm and hurried downstairs, resolving to show it to Evelyn. But when she entered the kitchen, her mother was busy preparing dinner, humming softly to herself. Clara hesitated, unsure how to broach the topic. Instead, she slipped the journal into her backpack and promised herself she'd figure it out later. Over the next few days, Clara became obsessed with deciphering the journal. She spent hours poring over its contents, cross-referencing the symbols with images online, and flipping through encyclopedias at the library. Slowly, pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place. The symbols appeared to correspond to astronomical phenomena, specifically alignments involving multiple planets and stars. As for the convergence, it seemed to refer to some kind of event, a cosmic moment when these celestial bodies would come together in perfect harmony. But what truly unsettled Clara were the dreams that started haunting her nights. Vivid and surreal, they transported her to a realm unlike anything she'd ever seen. In her dreams, she stood before a glowing orb suspended in a vast void, surrounded by swirling galaxies. A voice echoed in her mind, low and melodic, speaking words she couldn't understand yet somehow knew were important. Each dream ended the same way, the orb pulsating brighter and brighter until it consumed everything in a blinding flash of light. By the end of the week, Clara was more confused than ever. The journal, the strange happenings in town, and now the dreams. It all felt connected somehow. Yet the biggest question remained unanswered. What role did Evelyn play in all of this? Was her mother hiding something? And if so, why? Clara's discovery of the mysterious journal had ignited a fire within her, a restless curiosity that refused to be extinguished. She couldn't shake the feeling that the symbols and cryptic phrases held answers to questions she didn't even know how to ask yet. But deciphering the journal on her own proved to be an impossible task. The symbols were unlike anything she'd ever seen, and the fragmented text seemed deliberately obscure. Frustrated but determined, Clara decided it was time to bring someone else into her investigation. Her best friend, Alex, was the obvious choice. Unlike most teenagers in Havenbrook, Alex had always been fascinated by the unknown. He spent his free time reading about extraterrestrial life, ancient civilizations, and fringe science theories. His room was a chaotic mess of posters depicting UFO sightings, books on quantum physics, and half-finished inventions he claimed would change the world someday. While others dismissed him as eccentric, Clara admired his relentless curiosity. If anyone could help her make sense of the journal, it was Alex. One afternoon after school, Clara biked over to Alex's house. She knocked on the door, clutching the leather-bound journal tightly under her arm. When Alex answered, his eyes lit up with excitement at the sight of her. "You look like you're about to tell me aliens abducted your cat," he joked, stepping aside to let her in. "Not my cat," Clara said, holding up the journal. "But maybe something just as weird." Alex's grin faded as he took the book from her hands. "Whoa, this looks old. Where did you find it?" "In the attic," Clara replied. "It belongs to my mom, I think. But there's stuff in here I can't figure out. Symbols, weird phrases, and this thing called the convergence. Have you heard of it?" Alex shook his head, flipping through the pages. "Nope, but this is wild. These symbols, they kind of remind me of crop circle designs or star charts. Let me grab my laptop. We might be able to cross-reference them online." For the next few hours, the two friends pored over the journal, comparing its contents to images and articles they found on the internet. They quickly realized that the symbols bore similarities to ancient scripts used by long-lost civilizations, particularly those associated with astronomy. Some of the patterns matched constellations visible only during specific celestial alignments, while others resembled mathematical formulas for calculating planetary orbits. "It's like whoever wrote this was trying to map out some kind of cosmic event," Alex mused, tapping furiously at his keyboard. "And this phrase, the convergence, it keeps showing up. Maybe it's referring to when multiple planets line up in space. That happens sometimes, right?" Clara nodded, though her mind raced with possibilities far beyond simple astronomical phenomena. "Yeah, but what if it's more than that? What if it's, I don't know, something bigger? Like, what if it's tied to whatever's been happening around town lately? The power outages, the weird animal behavior, all of it." Alex raised an eyebrow. You think your mom's involved somehow? Clara hesitated. She hadn't told Alex about the dreams or the strange energy she'd felt emanating from the journal. It sounded crazy, even to her. Still, she couldn't ignore the nagging suspicion that Evelyn knew more than she was letting on. I don't know, she admitted finally. But there's something off about all of this. Something big. Their conversation was interrupted by a loud buzzing noise coming from Alex's desk. It was his drone, a small gadget he built himself and often used to explore hard-to-reach places. The device hovered lazily in the air before settling back onto its charging pad. Seeing it sparked an idea in Clara's mind. Hey, do you think we could use the drone to check out the forest behind my house? She asked suddenly. There's this area near the edge of town where the ground feels weird, like warmer than it should be. I noticed it last week when I went for a walk. Alex's eyes widened. Warm ground. That could mean underground activity, like geothermal vents or something else entirely. Let's do it. The next morning, armed with Alex's drone and a backpack full of supplies, the two friends set out for the woods. The air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of pine needles and damp earth. As they ventured deeper into the forest, the sounds of Havenbrook faded away, replaced by the rustling of leaves and the occasional chirp of birds. Eventually, they reached the spot Clara had described, a clearing surrounded by towering trees, their branches forming a natural canopy overhead. This is it, Clara said, pointing to a patch of ground that looked no different from the rest. Right here. Feel it. Alex crouched down, pressing his hand against the soil. Sure enough, it radiated a subtle warmth, almost imperceptible unless you were paying close attention. Okay, this is definitely not normal, he muttered, pulling out the drone. Let's see what's going on underneath. He activated the drone, guiding it carefully toward the ground. Equipped with thermal imaging and a high-resolution camera, the device began scanning the area. Within moments, the screen displayed a series of heat signatures emanating from beneath the surface. They formed a grid-like pattern, stretching deep into the earth. What the heck is that? Alex whispered, zooming in on the image. It looks man-made or alien-made, depending on how wild your imagination gets. Clara stared at the screen, her heart pounding. We need to follow it. Using the drone's live feed, they traced the pattern until it led them to a narrow fissure hidden among the roots of an ancient oak tree. Peering inside, they saw a steep staircase carved into the rock, descending into darkness. The air smelled metallic, tinged with a faint hum that vibrated in their chests. This is insane, Alex said, his voice trembling with equal parts fear and excitement. Do you think your mom knows about this? Clara didn't answer. Her thoughts were racing, piecing together fragments of recent events. The strange occurrences in town, the journal, her dreams, and now this underground labyrinth. Whatever secret Evelyn was keeping, it was bigger than either of them had imagined. We have to go down there, Clara said firmly, gripping the flashlight Alex handed her. If we want answers, this is where we'll find them. The staircase spiraled downward into the earth, its stone steps slick with moisture and faintly illuminated by the beam of Clara's flashlight. Each step echoed softly in the cavernous silence, amplifying the sense of unease that had settled over both Clara and Alex. The air grew colder as they descended, carrying with it an almost electric charge that prickled their skin. It wasn't just the physical descent that made Clara feel like she was leaving her ordinary life behind. It was the growing realization that whatever lay ahead might change everything she thought she knew about her mother, her town, and herself. At the bottom of the staircase, they emerged into a vast underground chamber. The space was unlike anything either of them had ever seen. Strange machines hummed quietly along the walls, their metallic surfaces etched with intricate patterns that matched the symbols from Evelyn's journal. Thick cables snaked across the floor, connecting the devices to a central structure. A massive orb suspended in midair, glowing faintly with an otherworldly light. The entire scene felt alien yet oddly familiar, as if the designs were meant to communicate something profound but incomprehensible. This can't be real, Alex whispered, his voice trembling. He moved closer to one of the machines, running his fingers hesitantly over its surface. It's like technology from another planet, or maybe another dimension. Clara didn't respond. Her eyes were fixed on the orb at the center of the room. Something about it resonated deep within her, stirring memories of the dreams she'd been having. In those dreams, she'd stood before a similar orb, surrounded by swirling galaxies, and bathed in its radiant glow. Now, seeing it in person, she couldn't shake the feeling that it was calling to her, beckoning her closer. "Do you think my mom built all this?" Clara asked finally, her voice barely above a whisper. She turned to Alex, searching for answers he didn't have. Or do you think someone else did? And why is it here?" Alex shook his head, clearly overwhelmed. "I don't know, Clara. But I can tell you one thing. This isn't human tech. Look at these markings. They're too precise, too advanced. Whoever made this wanted us to notice them, to understand them somehow." As they continued exploring the chamber, they discovered holographic projections embedded in some of the machines. Using the touch-sensitive panels, Alex managed to activate one of them. A three-dimensional blueprint appeared in the air, depicting Earth surrounded by swirling lines and geometric shapes. At first glance, it looked like a map of planetary orbits, but upon closer inspection, Clara realized it was more than that. The diagram showed how energy could be funneled through the machines to alter Earth's atmosphere, transforming it into something different. "It's a terraforming device," Alex said, his tone hushed with awe. "This thing is designed to change the planet's environment, maybe even make it habitable for aliens." Clara's stomach churned at the implications. If what Alex said was true, then whoever created this machine wasn't interested in coexisting with humanity. They were planning to reshape the world for their own purposes. And if Evelyn was involved, then her role in all of this was far darker than Clara had imagined. Before they could process the full weight of their discovery, a low-frequency hum began emanating from the orb. The sound reverberated through the chamber, making the ground vibrate beneath their feet. Instinctively, Clara stepped back, clutching Alex's arm. "What's happening?" she asked, panic creeping into her voice. "I don't know," Alex replied, scrambling to shut down the projection. "Maybe we triggered something when we activated the hologram." But the humming only grew louder, accompanied by flashes of light emanating from the orb. Suddenly, a voice filled the chamber, not spoken aloud, but projected directly into their minds. It was melodic and soothing, yet carried an undertone of urgency. "You have awakened the convergence," the voice intoned. "Prepare yourselves." The words sent chills down Clara's spine. She glanced at Alex, who looked equally terrified. Before either of them could react, the lights dimmed, plunging the chamber into near darkness. Only the faint glow of the orb remained, casting eerie shadows across the walls. "We need to get out of here," Alex said, grabbing Clara's hand. "Now." They retraced their steps toward the staircase, but as they reached the base of the stairs, the entrance was sealed off by a shimmering barrier of energy. Trapped inside, they exchanged panicked glances. "There has to be another way out," Clara said, forcing herself to stay calm despite the rising fear in her chest. She scanned the chamber, looking for any sign of an alternate exit. That's when she noticed a smaller alcove tucked away in the corner of the room. Inside, there was a pedestal holding what appeared to be a control panel. "Over there," Clara exclaimed, pulling Alex toward the alcove. Together, they examined the panel, which featured the same symbols they'd seen in Evelyn's journal. Though neither of them fully understood the language, Clara recognized certain patterns from her research with Alex. Guided by intuition, she pressed a sequence of buttons, hoping it would deactivate the barrier. To their relief, the shimmering wall dissipated, allowing them to escape up the staircase. Once outside, they collapsed onto the forest floor, gasping for breath. The sunlight filtering through the trees seemed impossibly bright after the oppressive gloom of the underground chamber. For several minutes, neither of them spoke. They simply sat there, trying to process what they'd witnessed. Finally, Alex broke the silence. "So, what now?" he asked, his voice heavy with uncertainty. Clara stared at the journal still clutched in her hands. For days, she'd been searching for answers, but now that she had found them, she wished she could unsee everything. Yet, even amidst the chaos, one thing was clear: Evelyn was at the heart of it all. Whether she was a victim, a perpetrator, or something in between, Clara needed to confront her mother, and soon. "I need to talk to my mom," Clara said firmly, standing up. "She owes me the truth." Alex nodded, though worry lingered in his expression. "Just be careful, okay? Whatever's going on, it's bigger than both of us." The weight of the journal in Clara's hands felt heavier than ever as she walked back home, her mind a storm of conflicting emotions. She had spent hours rehearsing what she would say to Evelyn, but no amount of preparation could ease the knot of dread tightening in her stomach. The underground chamber, the machines, the glowing orb, all of it pointed to one undeniable conclusion: Evelyn was involved in something far beyond human comprehension. And now, Clara needed answers. When she arrived at the house, Evelyn was in the kitchen, humming softly as she prepared dinner. The smell of roasted vegetables and herbs filled the air, a comforting aroma that usually brought Clara peace. But tonight, it only heightened her unease. How could someone so warm and familiar be connected to such an alien conspiracy? "Clara." Evelyn greeted her with a smile, wiping her hands on her apron. "You're home late. Did you have fun with Alex?" Clara hesitated, clutching the journal tighter. For a moment, she considered backing out, pretending everything was normal. But then she remembered the dreams, the strange energy surges, and the ominous voice in the underground chamber. This wasn't just curiosity anymore, it was survival. "Mom," Clara began, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside her. "We need to talk." Evelyn's expression shifted slightly, a flicker of concern crossing her face. "Of course, sweetheart. What's wrong?" Clara placed the journal on the kitchen table, its worn cover catching the soft glow of the overhead light. "I found this in the attic. It belongs to you, doesn't it?" Evelyn froze, her hands hovering over the cutting board. Her eyes darted from the journal to Clara, searching for something: guilt, perhaps, or fear. When she finally spoke, her voice was calm, though tinged with sadness. "Yes, it does," she admitted, pulling out a chair and sitting down. "I didn't think anyone would find it. I should have told you sooner, Clara. I wanted to protect you." "Protect me from what?" Clara demanded, her frustration bubbling to the surface. "From the truth. From knowing that there's some kind of alien machine buried under our town. That people are acting weird, and animals are disappearing, and power grids are failing. And somehow, it's all connected to you." Evelyn sighed, her shoulders slumping as if carrying an invisible burden. "It's not what you think, Clara. Please, let me explain." For the next hour, Evelyn unraveled a story so extraordinary that Clara struggled to process it. Decades ago, Evelyn revealed, she hadn't been a librarian or even human. Not entirely. She belonged to an ancient alien species known as the Valeri, beings capable of blending seamlessly into other civilizations. Their purpose was simple yet devastating: to prepare uninhabited worlds for colonization by terraforming them into environments suitable for their kind. But Earth wasn't supposed to be on the list. Evelyn continued, her voice trembling. "When I discovered the plans for the convergence, I couldn't stand by and watch. Your planet, your people, are too precious, so I went rogue. I erased my past, came here, and tried to live a normal life. I hoped they'd forget about me." "They?" Clara echoed, her heart pounding. "You mean your own people?" Evelyn nodded. "Yes, they tracked me down recently. They want me to finish what I started, to activate the convergence device beneath Havenbrook. If I refuse, they'll do it themselves. Either way, Earth will change forever. Clara sank into a chair, overwhelmed by the enormity of what Evelyn was saying. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Why keep this from me? I wanted to shield you, Evelyn said, tears welling up in her eyes. You're my daughter, Clara. My miracle. I never meant for any of this to touch you. But now I see that keeping secrets has only made things worse. A long silence stretched between them, broken only by the faint ticking of the clock on the wall. Clara stared at her mother, trying to reconcile the woman before her with the revelation she had just heard. Was Evelyn truly protecting humanity, or was she merely delaying the inevitable? Could she trust her, or was this just another layer of deception? Finally, Clara spoke. If you really care about Earth, then help me stop them. Help me destroy the machine. Evelyn shook her head, her expression pained. I can't, Clara. The machine is tied to me. It uses my energy to function. Destroying it would kill me. The room seemed to shrink around Clara as those words sank in. Saving the planet meant losing her mother, but doing nothing meant losing everything else. What happens if we don't stop it? Clara asked quietly. Evelyn looked away, unable to meet her daughter's gaze. The convergence will begin. Earth's atmosphere will shift, becoming toxic to humans, but perfect for the Valari. Billions will die, and those who survive will be forced to adapt or perish. Clara clenched her fists, anger and despair warring within her. There has to be another way. There has to be something we can do. Evelyn reached across the table, taking Clara's hand in hers. I've been thinking about that. There might be a way to delay the activation, to buy us more time. But it won't be easy, and it won't come without risks. Clara met her mother's gaze, determination burning in her eyes. Tell me what we need to do. Later that night, as Clara lay in bed staring at the ceiling, her mind raced with possibilities. Evelyn's plan involved infiltrating the underground facility and tampering with the machine's core, a task that required precision and stealth. While Clara trusted her mother's intentions, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into a trap. The Valari agents wouldn't let them interfere without a fight. Her thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock on her bedroom door. Evelyn peeked in, her face pale but resolute. Clara, are you awake? I'm here, Clara replied, sitting up. What is it? Evelyn stepped inside, closing the door behind her. In her hands, she held a small metallic object, a pendant shaped like a crescent moon. Its surface shimmered faintly, as if alive. This belonged to your father, Evelyn said, placing the pendant in Clara's palm. He was human, you know. He gave his life to protect me when the Valari first came looking for me. This pendant contains part of his essence, a reminder of the love we shared and the sacrifices he made. Clara stared at the pendant, her throat tightening. Why are you giving this to me now? Because tomorrow we may not have another chance, Evelyn said softly. No matter what happens, remember that I love you, Clara. You are the best part of me, the hope that keeps me fighting. Tears welled up in Clara's eyes as she hugged her mother tightly. For the first time, she realized how much Evelyn had sacrificed, not just for herself, but for humanity. Whatever challenges lay ahead, Clara vowed to face them head-on. Together, they would find a way to save both Earth and each other. As Evelyn left the room, Clara gripped the pendant, drawing strength from its warmth. She didn't know what the future held, but one thing was certain. She wouldn't give up without a fight. The next morning, Clara woke up with a sense of purpose that overshadowed her lingering fears. She knew the road ahead would be dangerous, but she also felt a newfound determination to protect her home and her mother. Evelyn had already begun preparing for their mission, gathering supplies and sketching out a rough map of the underground facility. Despite the gravity of the situation, there was a quiet resolve in her movements, as if she'd finally embraced the role fate had thrust upon her. Clara joined Evelyn in the kitchen, where the table was covered with notes, diagrams, and tools. One item stood out among the clutter, a small metallic device resembling a compass. It pulsed faintly with a blue light, its surface etched with the same symbols from the journal. "What's this?" Clara asked, picking it up cautiously. "It's a disruptor," Evelyn explained, adjusting the strap of her backpack. "It'll interfere with the Valeri agents' communication systems. If we can disable their ability to coordinate, we'll have a better chance of reaching the machine's core undetected." Clara nodded, tucking the device into her pocket. "Do you think it'll work?" Evelyn hesitated before answering. "I hope so. But nothing about this is guaranteed. We're going to need more than just gadgets. We'll need allies." That's when Clara remembered Alex. He had been instrumental in decoding the journal and discovering the underground chamber. His knowledge of technology and his resourcefulness made him an invaluable asset. Though involving him meant putting him in harm's way, Clara couldn't imagine doing this without him. "I'll call Alex," Clara said firmly. "He deserves to know what's going on, and he'll want to help." Evelyn didn't argue. Instead, she gave Clara a small smile. "You've always had good instincts. Trust them." Later that afternoon, Clara met Alex at their usual spot near the edge of town, a secluded clearing surrounded by tall trees. When she told him about Evelyn's confession and their plan to sabotage the convergence device, his initial shock quickly gave way to excitement. "This is insane," Alex said, pacing back and forth. "Like actual aliens insane. But count me in. I'm not sitting this one out." Clara grinned despite herself. "We might not survive this, you know." "Yeah, well, dying while saving the world beats living through whatever those aliens have planned," Alex replied with a shrug. "Besides, someone has to make sure you don't blow yourself up." Their banter helped ease some of the tension, but Clara knew they couldn't afford to lose focus. They spent the rest of the day reviewing Evelyn's plans and brainstorming contingencies. By the time evening fell, they had a solid strategy, or as close to one as they could manage under the circumstances. As they headed back to Clara's house, they encountered an unexpected visitor waiting for them on the porch. Dr. Marcus Hale, a reclusive scientist who lived on the outskirts of Havenbrook. Known for his eccentric theories about extraterrestrial life, Dr. Hale rarely interacted with the townsfolk. Yet here he was, clutching a battered briefcase and looking unusually agitated. "Dr. Hale," Clara asked, surprised, "what are you doing here?" The older man glanced around nervously before stepping closer. "I overheard bits of your conversation earlier," he admitted, "about the convergence. You're right. It's real. And it's happening sooner than you think." "How do you know about it?" Alex demanded, narrowing his eyes suspiciously. Dr. Hale sighed, running a hand through his graying hair. "Because I've seen it before. Years ago, I worked on classified research involving unidentified energy signatures. The patterns you described match something I've studied, but never understood until now. Whatever's happening beneath Havenbrook, it's connected to a larger network of alien activity." Clara exchanged a glance with Alex, unsure whether to trust him. But Evelyn, who had stepped outside upon hearing the commotion, seemed intrigued. "Tell us everything," Evelyn said, gesturing for Dr. Hale to come inside. Over steaming cups of tea, Dr. Hale revealed fragments of his past work, including experiments he'd conducted on strange artifacts recovered from remote locations around the globe. Many of these objects shared similarities with the machines in the underground chamber, leading him to believe they were part of a coordinated effort by an advanced civilization to terraform planets. "If we combine my research with your insights," Dr. Hale concluded, addressing Evelyn, "we might stand a chance of stopping the convergence." Though hesitant at first, Evelyn eventually agreed to collaborate with Dr. Hale. Together, the four of them refined their plan, incorporating his expertise into their strategy. For the first time since discovering the truth, Clara felt a glimmer of hope. The following night, armed with makeshift weapons, the disruptor, and a renewed sense of purpose, the group set out for the underground facility. Using Alex's drone to scout ahead, They navigated the forest carefully, avoiding patrols of Valeri agents who roamed the area. The air was thick with tension, every rustle of leaves or distant hum of machinery sending shivers down their spines. When they reached the fissure leading to the chamber, Evelyn paused, her expression grim. "This is it," she said softly. "Once we go down there, there's no turning back." Clara squeezed her mother's hand reassuringly. "We'll get through this together." Descending into the cavernous space, they moved swiftly toward the central orb. Along the way, they encountered automated defenses, drones equipped with laser-like beams, and walls of energy barriers. Thanks to Dr. Hale's modifications to the disruptor, they managed to bypass most of these obstacles, though not without close calls. But their luck ran out when they reached the core chamber. A group of Valeri agents awaited them, their elongated forms shimmering faintly in the dim light. Their leader, a tall figure with luminous eyes, stepped forward, addressing Evelyn directly. "You cannot stop what has already begun," the alien said, its voice resonating like a chorus. "Your defiance only delays the inevitable." Evelyn stood firm, shielding Clara behind her. "I won't let you destroy this planet. Not while I still draw breath." The standoff was interrupted by Alex, who used the disruptor to create a burst of electromagnetic interference. The agents staggered, momentarily disoriented, giving the group a window to reach the orb. "We're almost there," Clara shouted, her heart racing as she activated the final sequence to tamper with the machine's controls. But as the orb began to destabilize, the ground shook violently, and alarms blared throughout the chamber. The Valeri regrouped, advancing toward them with renewed aggression. "Go," Evelyn urged, pushing Clara toward the exit. "I'll hold them off." "No," Clara cried, tears streaming down her face. "I won't leave you." Evelyn cupped her daughter's cheek, her gaze unwavering. "You have to, Clara. This is my choice. Protect Earth, for both of us." With those words, Evelyn turned to face the approaching agents, her body glowing with an ethereal light. The last thing Clara saw before fleeing with Alex and Dr. Hale was her mother standing tall, a beacon of sacrifice amidst chaos. As they emerged into the cold night air, the ground trembled again, and a deafening roar echoed from below. Clara collapsed to her knees, clutching the pendant tightly. Whether they had succeeded or failed remained uncertain, but one thing was clear: Evelyn's love for her daughter and her adopted world had been absolute. The forest was eerily silent as Clara, Alex, and Dr. Hale stumbled out of the underground chamber, their breaths coming in ragged gasps. The tremors beneath their feet had subsided, but the air still crackled with residual energy, the lingering reminder of the chaos they had left behind. Clara clutched the crescent moon pendant tightly in her hand, its faint warmth offering little comfort against the storm raging within her. Evelyn's sacrifice replayed in Clara's mind like a broken record, her mother standing tall, glowing with an otherworldly light, choosing to stay behind to buy them time. It wasn't supposed to end this way. They were supposed to stop the machine together, to find a solution that didn't involve losing everything. But now, Evelyn was gone, or so Clara feared, and the weight of responsibility rested solely on her shoulders. "We need to keep moving," Dr. Hale urged, his voice low but urgent. "If the Valeri recover from the disruptor, they'll come after us." Clara nodded numbly, forcing herself to stand. Her legs felt heavy, as if weighed down by guilt and grief, but she knew they couldn't afford to stop. "Not yet. Where do we go?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Back to my lab," Dr. Hale replied. "I have equipment there that might help us monitor the situation. If the convergence is truly underway, we'll see signs of it soon enough." With no other options, the trio set off into the night, their footsteps crunching softly on the frost-covered ground. The journey back to Dr. Hale's secluded cabin felt endless, each step dragging them further away from Evelyn and deeper into uncertainty. As they walked, Clara's thoughts drifted to her mother, to the life they'd shared, and the secrets Evelyn had kept hidden for so long. She wondered if she would ever fully understand the choices Evelyn had made or forgive herself for leaving her behind. When they finally reached Dr. Hale's lab, a modest structure nestled deep in the woods, they were greeted by the hum of machinery and the glow of monitors displaying streams of data. Dr. Hale wasted no time setting up additional sensors, connecting them to a large central screen that projected real-time readings of Earth's atmospheric conditions. "This isn't good," he muttered, adjusting his glasses as he studied the graphs. "There's already evidence of destabilization in the ionosphere. If we don't act fast, the effects will spread globally within hours." "What does that mean?" Alex asked, his face pale. "It means weather anomalies, radiation spikes, and potentially catastrophic disruptions to ecosystems," Dr. Hale explained grimly. "If the convergence completes, Earth won't just be uninhabitable. It'll be unrecognizable." Clara sank into a chair, overwhelmed by the enormity of what they faced. "Is there anything we can do? Any way to reverse it?" Dr. Hale hesitated before answering. "Maybe. But it won't be easy. The orb at the facility is the key. It's acting as a focal point for the convergence. If we can somehow redirect its energy." "Redirect it where?" Clara interrupted, her voice rising with desperation. "We barely made it out alive last time." "I don't know," Dr. Hale admitted, frustration creeping into his tone. "But sitting here won't solve anything. We need to think creatively, and quickly." For several tense minutes, the room was filled only with the sound of typing and the occasional beep of equipment. Then, Alex spoke up, his eyes lighting up with an idea. "What about the artifact you found earlier, Clara? The one that matched the symbols in your journal. Could it interact with the orb somehow?" Clara frowned, pulling the small orb-like artifact from her pocket. It was cool to the touch, its surface etched with the same intricate patterns that adorned the machines in the underground chamber. She hadn't thought much about it since finding it, but now, under the harsh fluorescent lights of the lab, it seemed to pulse faintly, almost as if responding to the crisis unfolding around them. "I don't know how it works," Clara admitted, "but maybe it's worth trying." Dr. Hale examined the artifact closely, his expression shifting from skepticism to cautious optimism. "This could be a universal interface," he said slowly, "a tool designed to bridge different forms of technology. If we can get close enough to the orb, we might be able to use this to reroute the energy flow. But getting close enough means going back," Alex pointed out, his voice tinged with dread. "And without Evelyn, we're on our own." Clara stood abruptly, determination hardening her features. "Then we go back. We owe it to her, to everyone, to try." The return trip to the underground facility was fraught with peril. The Vereri agents had regrouped, their movements more coordinated and aggressive than before. Using the disruptor sparingly, the group managed to evade detection, slipping through narrow passages and hidden alcoves until they reached the core chamber. Inside, the massive orb pulsed erratically, its light flickering between hues of red, blue, and gold. Around it, the Vereri agents worked frantically, attempting to stabilize the machine despite the interference caused by Evelyn's selfless act. Clara clenched her fists, steeling herself for what lay ahead. "Stay here," she whispered to Alex and Dr. Hale. "I'll handle the artifact." "No way," Alex protested. "You're not doing this alone." Before Clara could argue, Dr. Hale intervened. "He's right. You'll need backup. I'll stay here and keep an eye on the disruptor. Alex, you go with her." With a nod, Clara and Alex crept toward the orb, dodging beams of light and bursts of energy as they moved. When they finally reached the pedestal supporting the orb, Clara hesitated, staring at the artifact in her hand. What if it didn't work? What if she triggered something worse? "You've got this," Alex whispered, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. Taking a deep breath, Clara placed the artifact against the orb. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the orb emitted a blinding flash of light, enveloping the entire chamber in a radiant glow. A surge of energy coursed through Clara, filling her with both pain and clarity. Visions flooded her mind. Images of distant galaxies, ancient civilizations, and Evelyn smiling warmly at her. When the light faded, Clara found herself kneeling on the floor, the artifact fused seamlessly into the orb. To her astonishment, the machine's erratic pulsations began to stabilize, its energy redirected outward in a protective shield rather than inward toward destruction. It worked, Alex breathed, awestruck. You did it. But their relief was short-lived. The Verari agents turned their attention to them, their glowing eyes fixed on Clara with unmistakable hostility. Before they could react, a familiar voice echoed through the chamber. Enough. Evelyn stepped forward, her form shimmering with an ethereal aura. She looked exhausted but resolute, her presence commanding silence even from the Verari. Leave this place, she commanded. Your mission ends here. To Clara's amazement, the agents complied, retreating into the shadows without protest. As the last of them disappeared, Evelyn collapsed to her knees, her glow fading rapidly. Mom. Clara cried, rushing to her side. I'm okay, Evelyn murmured, though her voice was weak. The connection. It's severed. The convergence is over. Tears streamed down Clara's face as she embraced her mother, gratitude and relief washing over her. Against all odds, they had succeeded, not just in saving Earth, but in preserving the bond between them. The first rays of sunlight filtered through the trees as Clara, Evelyn, Alex, and Dr. Hale emerged from the underground chamber into the crisp morning air. The ground beneath their feet no longer trembled with ominous energy, and the unnatural hum that had filled the forest for days had vanished entirely. It was as if the world itself had taken a deep breath, exhaling the tension that had gripped it for so long. For the first time in weeks, Havenbrook felt peaceful again. Evelyn leaned heavily on Clara's arm, her strength visibly diminished after the ordeal. Though she still radiated an aura of resilience, her face bore signs of exhaustion. Dark circles under her eyes, pale skin tinged with gray. Yet despite her frailty, there was a quiet triumph in her expression, a sense of purpose fulfilled. You did it, Evelyn whispered to Clara, her voice soft but filled with pride. You saved us all. Clara shook her head, tears streaming down her cheeks. We did it together. I couldn't have done any of this without you. Evelyn smiled faintly, brushing a strand of hair from Clara's face. You've always been stronger than you realize, my dear. Stronger than me. As they made their way back toward town, the weight of what they'd accomplished began to settle over them. The convergence, the catastrophic event that had threatened Earth's very existence, was over. Thanks to Clara's quick thinking and the artifact she'd used to redirect the orb's energy, the planet had been spared. Instead of terraforming Earth into an alien paradise, the machine now emitted a protective shield, safeguarding the atmosphere from future disruptions. Dr. Hale walked slightly ahead, muttering to himself as he scribbled notes in a small journal. This changes everything, he said, shaking his head in disbelief. If humanity can harness this kind of technology responsibly, we might just survive the challenges ahead. Alex, who had been unusually quiet since leaving the chamber, finally spoke up. So, does this mean aliens are done messing with us? Or should we expect round two? Evelyn chuckled weakly. For now, they'll leave us alone. But humanity must learn to stand on its own. My people, and others like them, won't hesitate to intervene if Earth becomes unstable again. Her words carried a sobering reminder. The victory they'd achieved wasn't permanent. It was a reprieve, a chance for humanity to prove itself capable of protecting its home. As much as Clara wanted to celebrate their success, she knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be questions about the strange occurrences, the missing crops, the power outages, and eventually someone would piece together the truth. When that day came, they would need to be ready. Back in Havenbrook, life slowly returned to normal, or at least as close to normal as it could get after such an extraordinary event. The townsfolk noticed subtle changes in the environment. Healthier plants, clearer skies, and a general sense of vitality that hadn't been present before. Some attributed these improvements to seasonal shifts or good fortune, while others whispered about miracles. No one suspected the real reason behind the transformation, not yet, anyway. For Clara, returning to her daily routine felt surreal. She went back to school, resumed her late-night sketching sessions by the pier, and even helped Evelyn organize books at the library. On the surface, everything seemed the same. But beneath the calm exterior, Clara carried a profound awareness of how fragile their world truly was, and how much responsibility rested on her shoulders. One evening, as mother and daughter sat together on the porch watching the sunset, Evelyn broke the comfortable silence between them. "I owe you an apology," she said softly, her gaze fixed on the horizon. "I kept so many secrets from you, thinking I was protecting you. But in doing so, I only pushed you further away." Clara turned to look at her, surprised by the vulnerability in Evelyn's tone. "You were trying to do the right thing," she replied gently. "And in the end, you gave up everything for me, for all of us. That's what matters." Evelyn nodded, though her eyes glistened with unshed tears. "Still, I wish I'd trusted you sooner. You're not just my daughter, Clara. You're my partner in this fight, and I couldn't be prouder of the person you've become." They sat in silence for a while, the warmth of shared understanding passing between them. Finally, Clara asked the question that had lingered in her mind ever since their escape from the underground facility. "What happens now? Will the Velari come back?" Evelyn sighed, choosing her words carefully. "They may try, but not anytime soon. Redirecting the orb's energy has created a barrier, a sort of cosmic shield, that will deter them for years, perhaps decades. By then, humanity will hopefully have advanced enough to defend itself." "And what about you?" Clara pressed, her voice trembling slightly. "Are you staying here? Or—" "I'm staying," Evelyn said firmly, reaching out to take Clara's hand. "This is my home now. My fight isn't over. I'll continue working to ensure that Earth remains safe, but I'll do it openly, with your help and the help of others who understand the stakes." Clara squeezed her mother's hand, relief washing over her. Despite everything they'd been through, she felt a renewed sense of hope. Together, they could face whatever challenges lay ahead. In the weeks that followed, Clara and Evelyn began reaching out to trusted allies, including Alex and Dr. Hale, to form a network dedicated to safeguarding Earth's future. They called themselves the Guardians, a name inspired by the protective shield now enveloping the planet. Their mission was simple yet daunting: to monitor alien activity, study the remnants of Velari technology, and prepare humanity for the possibility of future encounters. Alex threw himself into the project with characteristic enthusiasm, building gadgets and running simulations in his makeshift lab. Dr. Hale, meanwhile, pored over data collected during the convergence, publishing groundbreaking theories about extraterrestrial civilizations while keeping the most sensitive information classified. Even some of the townsfolk, unaware of the full extent of what had transpired, pitched in by reporting unusual phenomena and volunteering their skills. Through it all, Clara remained at the heart of the effort, her sharp mind and unwavering determination driving the group forward. She often found herself reflecting on the journey that had brought them here. The cryptic journal, the underground chamber, the sacrifices made along the way. Each step had tested her courage, her loyalty, and her belief in the impossible. And each step had taught her something invaluable about herself and the world around her. One night, as she stood on the pier staring up at the stars, Clara felt a familiar presence beside her. It was Evelyn, holding 2 steaming mugs of hot chocolate. "Thank you," Clara said quietly, accepting one of the mugs. "For everything." Evelyn smiled, her eyes twinkling in the starlight. "No, thank you. Without you, none of this would have been possible." They stood there for a long time, sipping their drinks and marveling at the vastness of the universe. Somewhere out there, beyond the constellations and swirling galaxies, other worlds existed, some friendly, others hostile. But for now, Earth was safe, and as long as Clara and Evelyn stood side by side, it would remain that way. In the distance, the ocean lapped gently against the shore, its rhythm steady and reassuring. Life in Havenbrook had returned to its quiet pace, but Clara knew better than anyone that appearances could be deceiving. Beneath the surface, the seeds of change had been planted, and when the time came, she would be ready to nurture them, to protect her home, her family, and the future of humanity.